In the long, long ago, people bartered. They traded things they had for things they wanted. I'll trade you my raspberries for that there pot pie.
I don't want your berries.
Come on, wow, sweet berries.
They're not sweet. They're old, and I don't like berries.
Give me that pot pie!
No.
As you can see, this bartering situation created some problems. Then, one day, a goldsmith walked up and said,
Now, everybody thinks gold is valuable, so why doesn't everybody trade gold for things they need?
a price was set for gold, and now it was very easy to conduct commerce because people could trade gold for all the things they needed.
Hartman! Wow, look at all my gold! Hey, stop them! That's my gold!
Say there, Pyle, I've got a vault and some guards. I can keep your gold safe for you, for a small fee.
Yeah, sure, that'd be awesome.
You see, Pyle, this is how the first bank made money.
There you go, Pyle. I owe you 100 gold coins.
Okay, great.
Come back anytime and redeem your gold when you want it. It'll be right here, in my vault.
Now you're holding the very first paper money, Pyle.
Wow, this is great. It all makes sense.
Oh, that's right. It was good, and everybody started using IOUs because everybody knew the IOU was as good as gold.
Wow, this candy is really a good price. 1 IOU. I'm getting some more for later. Hey, wait a minute. It was just 1 IOU. 10 IOUs for chocolate? You can't just raise prices like that. Wait, that is wrong.
It's called inflation, Pyle. It makes your IOUs worth less and less until they are worth nothing. Less bang for the buck. Dollar ain't what it used to be.
But I worked hard and I baked all those pot pies. Now I have to work harder to make less? That's not fair.
Oh, if you think that's not fair, you're gonna love the next part.
What's he doing?
How do banks make money, Pyle?
By making more loans?
Oh, that's right. He's good. See, he prints more IOUs without any more gold, loans them out for interest, makes a pretty penny, and nobody is the wiser. Unless everybody wanted their gold back at the same time.
No. That's my gold.
Not anymore.
What are you talking about?
I'd like to redeem my IOUs, please. Thank you very much.
Hey! I want my gold back now! Thief!
Gotta love the bank run, bringing people together. See, they all found out he was stealing, made a run on the bank, and demanded their gold. But as you can see, there ain't no gold to get.
1633 to 1672, the rise of goldsmith bankers. Some British goldsmiths, by letting their safes be used for deposits of valuables, gradually evolve into bankers. Goldsmiths' notes come to be used as evidence of ability to pay. Because goldsmiths' notes are accepted as evidence of ability to pay, they are a convenient alternative to handling coins or bullion. This marks the start of the use of banknotes in England. 1694, the Bank of England is founded. The main purpose of founding the bank is to raise money for war by taxation and by a novel device of permanent loans on which interest is paid, but the principal is never repaid. This form of debt forever lending is still practiced today, and Britain is currently paying at least one of these debt forever loans. 1797. Bank of England notes are made inconvertible. Inconvertible means you can't get gold or silver in exchange for the notes anymore. In 1811, Parliament rejected a proposal to restore convertibility of notes. The government argues successfully that restoring convertibility would imperil the British war effort, coincidentally leaving all the gold and silver denominated on the money in the hands of a few wealthy bankers. On December the 23rd, 1913, the Federal Reserve is created in America. As an independent central bank, its monetary policy decisions do not have to be approved by the President or anyone else in the executive or legislative branches of government. 1933. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, using the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, issued an executive order requiring that in less than 1 month, all persons in possession or control of gold coin, gold bullion, or gold certificates are to turn them in to any Federal Reserve Bank or member bank of the Federal Reserve System. thus putting a quiet end to the gold standard and concentrating ownership of all gold and silver in the hands of a few wealthy bankers. 1914. New British notes issued and gold is withdrawn from circulation. New £1 and 10 shilling notes are issued in Britain. The success of the new notes allows banks to withdraw gold gradually from internal circulation, thus putting a quiet end to the gold standard and concentrating ownership of all gold and silver in the hands of a few wealthy bankers. 1995. Mondex electronic cash cards introduced. Trials of the Mondex Smart Card, which is intended as a replacement for cash, begin in Swindon in Britain. 1995. Mark Twain Bank adopts DigiCash. This is an anonymous form of digital money developed by the cryptographer David Chaum, probably the very first cryptocurrency. 2002. New euro coins and notes are introduced by the European Union. These replace the national coinages and banknotes of all countries which adopt the new single European currency, backed by private finance and the issuing of interest-bearing debt bonds to be paid back by all the people of Europe. 2009. Bitcoin created by Satoshi Nakamoto. The first cryptocurrency to begin trading was Bitcoin in 2009. Since then, numerous cryptocurrencies have become available. Cryptocurrencies incorporate principles of cryptography to implement a distributed, decentralized, and secure information economy. No group or individual may accelerate, stunt, or abuse the production of money. Only a certain amount of cryptocurrency is produced at a rate which is defined and publicly known. In essence, a Bitcoin is a fiat currency, but its independence or decentralization make it less likely to be devalued by a state or a small group of wealthy bankers.
America's national income gets bigger and bigger. In 1943, it was $142 billion. That was double the 1939 figure, triple the figure for 1933.
But by the end of World War II, the U.S. had 2/3 of all the world's monetary gold, the central bank gold, and the rest of the world had to share the other third, and Europe had none. So the world monetary system was no longer going to work. It would collapse. But we had made all these loans of dollars to Europe, so Europe was flooded with dollars. And so representatives from around the world met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in 1944. They came up with a new world monetary system called the Bretton Woods system, where every currency on the planet, with the exception of just a few, they would be backed by the US dollar, and the US dollar would then be backed by gold at $35 per ounce. This gave confidence to all currencies. So this gave the world stability, and it pegged all the world's currencies to each other through the dollar to gold. So there was no such thing as the Forex. Currencies didn't float. The exchange rates were fixed year after year, and this helped to make world trade boom.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. Invited by President Roosevelt to the first major world financial meeting since the London Conference of 1933, they will work in the seclusion of this White Mountains resort. Zhang Shikung, one of China's representatives, with Secretary and Mrs. Henry Morgenthau. United States Treasury Secretary Morgenthau heads the American delegation. On the opening day, in his role of acting conference president, he addresses the meeting. To be discussed are plans for the stabilization of world currencies. All agreements must be ratified by the governing bodies of the nations involved before becoming effective. Delegates to this monetary and financial conference pose on the hotel lawn. These meetings are designed to promote trade in the post-war world and to create a foundation for lasting peace.
Representatives of 28 countries, with Lord Halifax signing for the United Kingdom, meet in the conference room of Washington's State Department for the signing of the Bretton Woods Monetary Agreement. Authorized by President Truman to sign for the United States was Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Vinson. Theoretically, Bretton Woods is an international pool of the goodwill of nations subscribing to the agreement. Summing up the importance of Bretton Woods, Mr. Vinson says,
"We can be thankful that the history that we are now making is not another chapter in the almost endless chronicle of war and strife. Ours is a mission of peace, not just lip service to the ideals of peace, but action, concrete action, designed to establish the economic foundations of peace on the bedrock of genuine international cooperation."
Then the dollar standard starts because we kept on printing dollars. Under the Bretton Woods system, there was no reserve ratio established where the U.S. actually had to have a certain amount of gold for how many dollars we created. So we had done a bunch of deficit spending for Korea, for Vietnam, for Johnson's Great Society, and expanded the currency supply, the amount of paper dollars in circulation, and exported them all over the world. And then in the 60s, Charles de Gaulle, president of France, realizes that we don't have the gold to back up the dollars.
Le fait que beaucoup d'États acceptent par principe des dollars au même titre que de l'or entraîne les Américains à s'endetter et à s'endetter gratuitement vis-à-vis de l'étranger, car ce qu'ils lui doivent, ils le lui payent avec des dollars qu'il ne tient qu'à eux d'émettre. Nous estimons nécessaire que les échanges internationaux soient établis comme c'était le cas avant les grands malheurs du monde, sur une base monétaire indiscutable et qui ne porte la marque d'aucun pays en particulier. Quelle base? En vérité, on ne voit pas qu'il puisse y avoir réellement de critères, d'étalons autres que l'or.
And he starts asking, France asks for their gold and trades in the dollars. And at that point, other countries saw this and start jumping on board. And the U.S. lost 50% of its gold from 1959 to 1971. But we still had, in 71, about 12 times more dollars that we had created than there was gold. And this run on the bank, basically, the U.S. now being the bank, this is a giant worldwide bank run, because the U.S., for the second time, had committed a fraud and created more receipts for gold than there was gold. It's that simple. And then finally, the markets sort of sensed this. And Nixon was forced to take us off the gold standard because if he had paid out gold until it got to zero, once we couldn't pay on some of those dollars, the entire worldwide monetary system would have collapsed.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. In full cooperation with the International Monetary Fund and those who trade with us, we will press for the necessary reforms to set up an urgently needed new international monetary system.
And on August 15th, 1971, all the world's currencies became fiat currency. I don't know why the rest of the world didn't rush out and hang him, but they didn't. They just all went along with this.
To our friends abroad, I give this assurance. The United States has always been and will continue to be a forward-looking and trustworthy trading partner.
There have been thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fiat currencies throughout history, and there isn't one that survived. It is a 100% failure rate. And we started this experiment where all the world's currencies would be fiat currencies simultaneously in 1971.
It turns out that banks actually have about 9 times as much money loaned out as they have on reserve in their vaults. This is possible because of what's referred to as fractional reserve lending. The The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the U.S., it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is, say another person comes into the bank and asks for a car loan of $9,000. At this moment, the bank loans out the $9,000 from your original deposit. It isn't there anymore. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. The money gets redeposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000. The banking system just created $90,000 by loaning out your money.
But what we have here, 30 to 40 years, different monetary system, 30 years, 28 years, 39 years plus, what's next? The world is going to have a new monetary system in this decade that we're in. We're going to experience this huge deflationary crash around the world. The world will probably end up on some sort of new monetary system, probably after governments try and print their way out of this and cause hyperinflations of all the currencies, and people will just lose confidence in currency. And what do they always go back to throughout history? Time after time, for the last 5,000 years actually, they always go back to gold and silver.
The Federal Reserve is one of the most important institutions in the United States. Through the management of currency and interest rates, the Fed attempts to keep banks secure. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution states that Congress should coin U.S. money. Additionally, the Founding Fathers condemned central banking. At Jekyll, the bankers and Aldrich created the core of the Federal Reserve Act. In one fell swoop, this act created the Fed and put it under the President's approval rather than that of Congress. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was born despite opposition and controversy. Critics say that allowing bankers to write financial laws is a conflict of interest. On the other hand, who knows more about banks than bankers? Today, the Fed calls itself a decentralized banking system. It's composed of 12 banks, each serving a different part of the U.S. These 12 are composed of other member banks. The Fed is unique in the legal world. It isn't owned by the U.S., and its leaders aren't elected by U.S. citizens. Officially, the Fed is owned by these member banks, but what does that mean exactly? Here's where it gets crazy. Many people believe the Fed is more than a mild-mannered group of bankers. They say it might be part of a plan to take over the world. These sources think a group of banking families have undertaken a conspiracy spanning generations with the goal of creating a worldwide feudal society. Rockefellers and Rothschilds have been accused of thousands of conspiracies, from stealing UFOs to heading satanic cults. Conspiracy theorists think the elites manipulate the economy toward a breaking point. Once the system breaks, the group will supposedly create a one-world government. They're allegedly banking on the idea that distressed people throughout the world will welcome any kind of authority.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers, and they're doing it in sections. The European currency, the euro, and the European Constitution is one part of it. Now they're trying to do it in America with the North American Union, right? And they want to create a new currency called the Amero, right? And the whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
everything.
you sell.
Everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one-world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave, you become a serf to these people. That's their goal, that's their intention. I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew, who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I had made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me, and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. He's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event, and out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we'd go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's going to be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people. He says, there's going to be war on terror, and he's just laughing. There's no, who are we fighting? I mean, why do you think 9/11 happened, and then nothing's happened since then? Do you think that our security is so great here that these people who pulled off 9/11, who were able to, can't knock down another plane? Come on, it's ridiculous. 9/11 was done by people in our own government and our own banking system to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie. An endless war on terror without any real enemy. That you can never define a winner.
And did he say that it's going to be perfect because you can't define an enemy? It just goes on and on?
Yeah, because you can't define a winner. There's no one to beat, so it goes on and on forever. And they can do whatever they want. They scare the hell out of the American public. Look, this whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. It's very difficult to say it out loud because people are intimidated against saying it. Because if you say it, they want to make you into a nutcase. But the truth has to come out. That's why I'm doing this interview. The fact of the matter happens to be that the whole war on terror is a fraud, it's a farce. Yeah, there's a war going on in Iraq because we invaded Iraq. And people over there fighting, But the war on terror, that's a joke, And until we discover what really happened on 9/11 and who was responsible for 9/11, because that's where the war on terror emanates from. That's where it comes from. It was 9/11 that allowed this war on terror to begin. And until we get to the bottom root of 9/11, the truth of 9/11, we'll never know about the war on terror. I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? What's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the bankers, the elite people, the bankers and some governor controlling the world.